Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely stunning fall from grace of an invincible corporate giant. We're talking about Nokia. Now, this is a company that didn't just participate in the mobile industry, right? They literally defined it. They were practically printing money, and they seemed completely untouchable. Until, well, suddenly they weren't. Okay, let's dive into this. How does the world's absolute largest phone company just lose everything? I mean, how does a titan with endless resources, brilliant engineers, and unparalleled market dominance fail to see the edge of the cliff before driving right off it? Understanding this isn't just a history lesson. It's a total masterclass in business survival.
Section 1. The King of Mobile.
To truly grasp the sheer magnitude of their fall, we first really need to stand at the summit and look at the peak. In the early days of the mobile era, there was absolutely no debate about who wore the crown. Nokia was number one. But you have to remember, being number one back then meant something entirely different than it does today. Nokia wasn't just slightly ahead of the pack, they were lapping them. Think back to those globally beloved, totally iconic devices, especially the legendary Nokia 3310. It wasn't just a phone, it was a whole cultural phenomenon. You had one, your parents had one, your friends had one. They manufactured trust just as much as they manufactured electronics. And that created this massive global footprint that made them the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how they captured our hearts and, our wallets. They built their empire on a few core pillars. First, incredibly durable phones. These things were notoriously indestructible. Seriously, if you dropped a Nokia, you'd probably worry more about the floor than the actual phone. Second, insane battery life. You could go days, sometimes over a week, without even looking for a charger. Add in really affordable pricing and a super strong global distribution network, and Nokia basically cooked up the perfect recipe for consumer loyalty. They gave the masses exactly what they needed, with hardware that literally never let them down. They earned an unparalleled level of customer trust worldwide. Moving on to Section 2, from paper to phones. Nokia didn't just wake up one morning and invent the modern cell phone out of thin air. And what's wild is that they weren't historically a stubborn or rigid company. They actually had this immense, proven capacity for radical adaptation. Back in the 19th century, Nokia started out as a single paper mill operation in Finland. Just paper. From forestry, they boldly transitioned into the 20th century by stepping into rubber, cables, and eventually electronics. By the late 20th century, they had totally shed their old skins to become a massive telecommunications juggernaut. So they had successfully navigated massive industrial shifts over 100 years to become a tech giant. Section 3. The Smartphone Revolution. Okay, so the year is 2007. The air in the tech world is thick with anticipation. But Nokia, they're sitting super comfortably on their throne, completely confident in their hardware. And then the ground completely opens up beneath them. Apple launches the iPhone and Android enters the chat. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the entire industry instantly shifted. We went from an old paradigm where phones were valued for hardware and physical durability right into a new paradigm of software ecosystems. Suddenly, consumers didn't care if their phone was indestructible. They cared about what the phone could do. They wanted apps, they wanted a seamless internet experience, a rich, interactive operating system. The rules of the game were completely replaced overnight. And here was Nokia still bringing a hammer to a software fight. Section 4. Mistakes that cost everything. Look, it's easy to just say the iPhone killed Nokia, but honestly, that's not the whole truth. Nokia definitely had a hand in their own downfall through some very specific strategic missteps. First up, their sluggish response. While competitors like Apple and Google were literally sprinting, Nokia was at a casual walk. They severely underestimated the threat, basically assuming their hardware dominance would just act as a shield. Second, management problems were breeding this fearful internal culture. Different departments were actually fighting each other instead of fighting the competition, and that completely stalled their ability to innovate. And finally, the massive anchor around their neck, the Symbian operating system. Nokia fiercely clung to this outdated OS, which was incredibly clunky and deeply limited compared to the superfluid iOS and Android environments. They were literally paralyzed by their past successes. Which brings us to Section 5, Collapse and Rebirth. Let's move to and see how this builds into a rapid, almost heartbreaking decline that played out in 3 really grim steps. Step 1, a dizzying drop in market share. As consumers flocked to smartphones, Nokia's revenue just completely plummeted. Panic set in. And this desperation led right into Step 2, a totally failed partnership with Microsoft. They actually abandoned their own software to adopt Windows Phone, kind of hoping that 2 struggling giants could prop each other up.
But yeah, it was too little, too late, and it completely failed to stop the bleeding. That inevitably forced step 3, the tragic sale of Nokia's entire phone business to Microsoft. The king of mobile was officially dead, forced to sell off the very division that made them a household name in the first place.
So, the crucial point is, the story didn't actually end there. Just when the whole world thought Nokia was entirely wiped off the map, they tapped into that exact 19th century survival instinct we talked about earlier. They orchestrated a massive, absolutely incredible pivot. Nokia completely shed their mobile phone identity and transformed into a powerhouse for telecommunications infrastructure and networking technology. So they went from making the devices in our pockets to building the massive, invisible networks that those exact devices rely on today. They survived, sure, but in a completely different form, operating entirely behind the scenes of the modern digital world. Nokia's story leaves us with an incredibly powerful truth. Success today absolutely does not guarantee success tomorrow. It is the ultimate lesson in the absolute necessity of innovation, adaptation, and really recognizing industry change before it just completely runs you over. They were the undisputed champions, yet they almost lost it all simply because they stopped looking ahead. So, as you think about the industries you work in or even just the brands you love, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If a giant as mighty as Nokia could fall asleep at the wheel, what massive blind spots might we be ignoring right now? Thanks for tuning into this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.